Good morning, bedheads. Click or clink, depending on what you like. Oh my gosh. I woke up this morning and I was like, this is the best. It doesn't even look as good as it did. Oh my gosh. Such a good bedhead this morning. I hope you're doing well. This is Karen from Ask the Spirit Guides, and this is Coffee with Karen. Share the love today. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about love versus fear, really. So I know that sounds boring, but it's not going to be boring. It's going to be really good. Trust me, it's going to be really good. Because I really do think this is one opportunity here, this conversation, to really think about in terms of our spiritual growth. Okay, that's what I'm thinking about right now is my spiritual growth, and ultimately, where do I want to sit in this world? Do I want to sit from a place of love, like legitimately, authentically from a place of love? Or do I want to go in and out of love and fear, which is basically pretty much my whole life, I think. I think that's where I've been. I probably, if I had to guess, most of us, that's where we are. We go from love to fear, love to fear, love to fear, just like constantly, depending on what's coming at us and what we're observing and all that kind of stuff. And so maybe that's considered the 4D, maybe not. And then so the all love would be considered the 5D, right? If you can approach and look at life from love. And then the up and down would probably be, I don't know, I can't even label it in terms of the 4D because I'm not sure. But then there's people who just live in fear most of the time, right? So that would be the 3D. So the question is, can you do this? Okay, so I'm going to give you a little task throughout this conversation, all right? If you're driving, obviously, it's not going to work for you, but you could take a mental note, all right? If you're not driving, grab a piece of paper, and so go pause, grab a piece of paper and a pen. What I want you to do throughout this conversation, because it'll be something you could do going forward throughout every part of your life, okay? Because I'm going to start doing this. You know, every time I talk now, I feel like, oh, there's another 30-day challenge. There's another 30-day challenge. We could do so many 30-day challenges. In fact, when I'm creating this journal, which I wrote in this today, and I'm not liking the size so much. It's a little flimsy to write in, so I'm glad I'm testing it out because I want to create something that I would want to use. So I think I'm going to talk to my sister about making it a little smaller. But if you're wondering about the next 30-day challenge or the first one we're going to do, be sure to sign up for the newsletter right there. There's the QR code. The link is in the description too. Okay, so yeah, 30-day challenge could be what we're going to do today. You could literally do this for the next 30 days. All right. Okay, so you got your paper and pen. What I want you to do is throughout this conversation, I want you to just do your best. Well, basically, you should listen to it the way you always do. Okay. Any conversation. All right. But I want you to notice when, like right now, are you listening from a place of love? I mean, I really haven't said too much that should bring you to anything but love. Okay. I'm even telling you to share the love on the mug today. Share the love. Click. So throughout this conversation, when you start to have a different response, and I mean any different response than love, I want you to write it down. Okay. So, and you'll know what I'm leaning towards in a minute. Okay. So, because there are only two emotions. Now, that is something I do want to look up and have it look at the science behind that. But if it really is, I think, easier for my little pea brain to grasp emotions if I put them in two buckets. Okay. So I've learned that from somebody, I don't know who, I think I've heard it over and over again, that there are two emotions. There's love and there's fear. Okay. So we all know what love feels like. Love to me, like even write down, you could pause right now and write down, what does love feel like to you? So before I even say it, then what does fear feel like to you? Okay. So love to me feels like calm, joy, openness, just open. I'm just open. Love feels to me like the ability to observe without emotion. That's what love feels like. I can just enjoy. It feels happy. I feel happy when I just feel I don't feel stressed. I feel so that's calm, right? So I'm starting to use fear words. So you get the idea that that's how I would describe love. So how would you describe the feeling of love for yourself? Okay. And you can put it in the comments. You can just write it down on your paper. So what does fear look like? Okay. To me, it feels like stress, anxiety, anger, reactivity, like reactiveness, quick reactions, closed to ideas. Okay. And then, of course, you have the whole range in between, right? So you could be flirting around in this conversation you could have a whole range of things. Okay. And this would go with anybody you're interacting with. So you and I are interacting right now. So this could be anybody we're interacting with. Okay. Which is why I say that most of us go up and down all day. All right. Especially if we're not aware, which I'm not. I mean, I'm going to become aware now because my preference through my spiritual evolution and my spiritual journey here on earth right now, my goal is to sit in the love area as often as possible. So those things I just described. Okay. So it actually is probably a good idea for each of us to write down. In fact, I'll do that when I get done. Write down, what does love feel like to you? And then I think that's the most important part, because if you don't have one of those feelings, if you can't hear something with openness, then you're not sitting in love, you're sitting in fear. Okay. Fear could be controlling. Fear is like my always having to, be understood. It's like, well, that's fear. Like, why do I always have to be understood? What am I afraid of if I'm not understood? So my goal is as I evolve on earth is to sit here in the love area as much as possible. Okay. So that being said, now I'm going to have a conversation about judgments, like how much we judge, all of us, and like judgment versus discernment. So, that sort of thing. And I'm going to bring up a topic that clearly from yesterday. Wow, you guys have a lot of opinions about this. Not a whole bunch. I don't know how many, because I only saw like a handful of comments, but the ones I did, I'm like, okay, people feel very strongly about Jeffrey Hope from Crimson Circle. And then I'm not going to talk bad about him. That's not what this is about. I'm going to use it as an example. Okay. So, Adamus Saint Germain. Okay. The person, the spirit he's channeling. Okay. Already, how did you feel? Especially if you know this, this topic, this person. Did you already just move from love and openness to anger or irritation or enclosedness? Okay, so we are going to use this as an example. This is just an example, because what my goal is, and again, I'm just sharing my own, remember, I'm the facilitator here. I'm just sharing my own evolution where I want to go. And if people are interested in moving that direction with me, that's amazing. Okay. It's just fun to do it together. We're just exploring these new ideas. All right. So there's a few things. All right. First, I asked AI, which you guys, AI is okay. So already, again, you are right when I said AI. How does that make you feel? Did you move from openness to closeness? Then you write on your under your fear list, you're going to write AI. Okay. Under your fear list, you're going to write Jeffrey, Crimson Circle, whatever. Okay. If you felt any kind of irritation by that. Okay. Because I want you to notice how quickly we can move. And really, the ultimate goal, I'm not going to hide the purpose of this. The ultimate goal is to stop for each of us to work on and be aware of how much we judge, and judgment is in the fear based. So when we judge, we are sitting in fear. Okay. And if that's where you want to sit most of your life, that's fine, but I don't, so that's why I'm exploring this. I mean, I'll constantly up and down, up and down. I'm not saying I'm here at all like most of the time, but I want to start becoming more aware of it. So this is how we become more aware of it. One, by having the conversation. And then once we have the conversation, you start to become more aware. And then if you start to write them down, the more you write them down, the more you can catch yourself like doing it, right? And then honestly, this whole fear area, that's, when people like say, well, what is shadow work or what is inner work? That's it right there. That's the shadow work. I like to take things and make them as simple as possible because that is your shadow work. So if you write down a fear and love, okay, categories, and you just wrote AI under fear because you had a reaction to whatever I just said, I can almost guarantee now, because I've had many conversations on this channel now with the community, and I've seen many comments, I can guarantee almost everything I say at some point, somebody is going to move to fear. Okay. So that's what we're talking about here. And I'm just using me as an example. This is one conversation. Think of how many conversations you have throughout the day. Not only conversations, but think of how many people, especially if you're a YouTuber, like you like to sit and watch YouTube, think of how many people you go through and you're like, judge, 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 judge. How often do you just sit with an open mind and appreciate things that are being said? Okay, so and then what I was going to say, one way to judge whether or not you're in the love area over here is if ideas can come to you, if an idea doesn't resonate with you, do you move the non-resonated idea to the fear list and the judgment and the I have to prove I'm right area? Or do you let it doesn't sit right with me, or it doesn't resonate with me? I like that better. It doesn't resonate with me. Do you allow that particular comment to just flush over you, just move away? Okay. And then go on to the next. So that would be you're being open when something comes to your way that doesn't resonate, or you're using your discernment, right? You don't have to agree with everything, but can you not agree with something and let it go through you and out or over you? Okay. So, but when we are we're always getting so many messages all day, every day, and we're using our critical thinking skills, but we use that critical thinking turns into judgment instead of just saying, okay, that thought doesn't mean anything to me. I'm going to let that one go. That one's fine. This one doesn't mean anything. I'm going to let that one go. But what we typically do, I'm just talking about myself, is I will move that. I don't actually do this that much, to be honest. To be honest, I think I do this less than a lot of people do. It does depend on the circumstance, for sure. Depends on how emotional I am about the circumstance. Okay, how deep I am within, like F45, let's just say. Okay, that one I can move. I can be open-minded. I can't even be open-minded when at all, but I'm working on that. So I'm just saying, like, I'm pretty good at doing it when, like, for instance, when I sit and listen to Jeffrey with Adamus, of course, not every message resonates with me, but I could sit with an open mind, listen, and write down the things that do resonate with me. So I wrote down a whole bunch of notes because those were the things that resonated. I didn't write down everything because it didn't resonate, right? But did I take that message and move it here to fear and judgment and pissed off and irritated? No. But it's many of you guys are doing that. And again, I'm just using yesterday as an example in how people were commenting, okay? So you can, and are you getting defensive now if that was something? Okay, so you get the idea, right? Because the goal is not for any of us to be right. The goal, if you're on a spiritual journey, and well, my goal, I always want to be as careful as possible. My goal is to be in love as much as possible, because that's where happiness is. That's where calmness is. That's where the experience of appreciation of being on earth is. But when we're in the judgment and the fear and all that, all we're doing is like living in our heads, and then we're just reacting, you know what I mean? So that's why I'm going to be focusing on this quite a bit, this judgment and how much am I judging and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so let's see. I asked AI to give me a 10-minute presentation, which I'm not going to do this as presentation style. They literally gave me a beautiful outline between, let's see, what did I ask? Okay. I said, please give me a concise, research-backed 10-minute talk outline on judgment versus discernment from a spiritual and scientific perspective, including the energy/karma principle. Okay, because what I asked for, it actually pulled that. It actually decided, this is amazing, you guys. I'm going to tell you which program I'm using, which is going to move some of you from love to fear. It's going to move some of you from openness to closeness. I am using DeepSeek. Okay, so put that in your closeness. I'm not going to explain it. Just put that in your closeness fear area right now and keep it there. Okay, that's the program I'm using. I'm just demonstrating how quickly you might have gone from openness to closeness in this conversation in 17 minutes, okay? I've already said AI, I've said Jeffrey, I've said Crimson Circle, I've said judgment versus discernment, I've said DeepSeek, okay? How many times have you moved over here? All right, it's just an awareness exercise, okay? So I had said to AI, actually, help me understand because I've heard people say this, like spiritual leaders, that what you put out there comes back tenfold. Okay. So the reason I ask that is because if we're putting love out there and we're openness, and this is all energy, guys, this is all energy. You can't fake it. You can't fake and say, oh, I'm in the love, but I'm going to be over here judging and be critical. That's not the energy of love. It just isn't. So if you're sending this out there, does that come back tenfold to you, right? If you put this out there, that comes back tenfold to you. So anyways, that's what AI was talking about when it said include the energy/karma principle. It consolidated my request of put something out there and it comes back tenfold to energy and karma principle. Okay, so it gave me the title of the discussion was Judgment versus Discernment, Wisdom Without the Weight. WEIGHT. Wisdom versus discernment, wisdom without the weight. 10 minutes time. Okay, the opening hook. Question, how often do you label things as good or bad and feel drained afterwards? How often do you label things as good or bad? So that could be, you could write that down here. You need to write down, how often do I label things as good or bad? Because how many times have you already done that in this conversation, right? Okay, because I'll tell you one thing. If you've already done that 4 times in this conversation, you're starting to close yourself off to any other information that actually might be useful for you. I'm not saying anything I talk about is useful, but I'm just, again, this is an example of how we go through our days. If we close ourselves off, we stop. We're not open then, closed and open. We're not open then to something that actually might be useful for us. Okay. And again, the fear stuff is your shadow work. So right now, if you put AI down and you put DeepSeek down, you could sit down and you could go through the video that I just did last Friday. I will post that video here if you haven't seen it. It's, I think I said the video is like, watch me in real time deal with F45. It was an example of how I was dealing with a fear and how you can get down to the shadow, how you can get down to the very core of what that is. Okay. So rather than leaving a comment here and trying to justify, don't waste your time doing that. Try not to stop. We could stop doing that on other channels. When you're triggered or when you move to fear, it would be better to spend your time going through this process I went over in that video I will post at the end of this video here. I'll put the link of that video also in the description. You might want to bookmark it or at least write down the process. I might do in the newsletter, there's the QR code again. I'm going to do an email one day on that process so that people could have it in writing. So I don't even have a name for it. Apparently there is a name for this. I just kind of did it when I was working with students, but I didn't learn how to do it. Over time, I just started doing this. So I'm just going to say core, get to the core. Okay. All right. So you could do that exercise but on every single thing you put on your list. So let's just say you start with, if AI, if you moved from here to here with AI, I don't trust it. Why don't you trust it? Because of this. Why is that? Okay, so that's really the exercise. You just kind of keep asking yourself questions until you get to the core. And that's your shadow. That's the shadow work. Okay. I just really simplified everything. Maybe too simple, but okay. So did you write down how often do you label things as good or bad and feel drained afterwards? You don't even need that part. Okay. They provided me with a quote. Judgment. This is actually a really good one. Judgment locks us in a cage. Discernment hands us the key. Discernment hands us the key. I'm going to put discernment in the love area because with discernment, you are not needing to judge, which means you have to react. You're just like, nope, that doesn't work for me. Let it go. Okay. But this one does. That doesn't work for me. Let it go. And you might be floating through YouTube and you might see Jeffrey and Adamus and you might go, yep, that one doesn't work for me. Let it go. So I'm not saying like you have to, because, there's so many people you have to discern, right? I'm just, again, using him as an example. But I am going to go back and I'm going to give you guys a little information about him and Crimson Circle. So according to AI, who I asked to go out and tell me, like, go out, get all the information, which is amazing. That's what AI can do for you. So, okay. And I personally find DeepSeek to be freaking amazing. And again, you have to think about, I mentioned DeepSeek to my sister Marcia and she immediately had a concern about it. Now you can put concerns over here too, but it doesn't mean that it's actually a concern. It's just that we get so many messages every day. We get bombarded, right? It's like, how do you deal with all those? Especially now. I mean, how things are going so fast. That's why we need to slow down, stop watching so much stuff, Okay, so judgment. Okay, so AI has, in my little presentation, has put judgment as ego-based. Okay, so over here in your judgment area, put ego. And over in the discernment, the love area, put wisdom. Really feels different, doesn't it? Ego, wisdom. Okay. So judgment, the spiritual part of judgment attaches moral weight, right or wrong. Right here, right or wrong. So often I try to say there are no right or wrong answers. They're both. So, and they're everything, in my opinion. The older I get, the more spiritual I get, the more gray things are. I don't think there are right or wrong. Okay, I mean, you can start to argue with me, but I'm not going to go over a whole bunch. You can start to argue with me, but why are you moving from love to fear about that? Discover it for yourself and, get to the core of that. Why do you want to start arguing that, yes, there are right or wrong things? There are right or wrong things. Get to the core of that, okay? I am just throwing out a whole bunch of stuff right now, so it's really like I couldn't, if it would take me 10 minutes to just talk about why I think there's no right or wrong. So I'm just going big picture today, okay? So anyways, okay, so spiritual judgment, ego-based, attaches moral weight, right or wrong, often with emotional charge. All right, I can tell in the comments who's commenting from this is just another perspective place, love, versus people like really feeling strongly about something and emotional charge. You can tell the difference in how people write stuff, okay? So are you commenting from an emotional charged place, which is ego, or are you commenting from hey, I just want to join in the conversation and provide a perspective, okay? So the science is linked to fight or flight. They have a fight or flight. There's a name of this. I can't even pronounce it. It's AMYGDALA activation. Okay, so that's the word. That's the name of the fight or flight study. And cognitive bias. Okay, cognitive bias is another study, quick judgments versus deliberate thinking. Okay, so remember, I asked for spiritual and science-based conversation here. Okay, discernment is wisdom-based. Okay, that feels so much. I just love the word wisdom. I just love it. The spiritual part is neutral observation and intuitive alignment. Neutral observation and intuitive alignment. This isn't for me versus this is bad. This isn't for me versus this is bad. Love, this isn't for me. It might be for you. It's not for me. This is bad. Shouldn't be for anybody, right? You can tell the difference in our community when people comment from both places. Just go to yesterday's video. I'll post it right here. Go to yesterday's video and look at the comments and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? I'm not saying that anyone who reacted with an emotional charge is wrong. I'm not saying you're bad. I'm saying we all do that, all of us, all the time. Come back and forth, most of us, right? Unless you're really living the 5D right now. Okay, so we're trying to, right, as a community, our goal as a community is just to work on our spiritual development so that we can move from the 3D to the 5D, okay? And in between this 4D, I think that is, I'm just going to label that the 4D, where we're just like boop, 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 back and forth. Okay, so again, discernment, wisdom-based spiritual perspective is neutral observation. So you can write neutrality or neutral observation, and intuitive alignment. This isn't for me versus this is bad. Science, associated with prefrontal cortex, rational assessment. Research was deliberate decision making. Okay, so there is research on this. It's associated with the prefrontal cortex. So I think the prefrontal is the fight or flight, isn't it? Okay, I don't know any about the science or the research, but for those who want it, you just get a little bit of that. All right. So they provided me with a visual aid. Judgment is reactive, close-hearted, creates separation. Discernment is responsive. Here's another point of view, kind of comments. Open-hearted and honors sovereignty, honors people to have their own way of seeing things without judgment. Okay. All right. So the energy karma principle, it's the spiritual law. What you put out returns amplified. That's Buddhism, karma, hermetism, hermetism. I'm not saying that right. As above, so below. Okay. So what you put out returns amplified. So I started to question like, oh, okay. So a lot of people, not a lot, but I mean, I will get, there are people who judge things I say, right? And which is one of the reasons why I can only read a certain number of comments on the channel because I have to protect myself, because if they were all comments from discernment, I would be able to read all of them. But because I get discernment, fear, or judgment, discernment, judgment, discernment, my emotions, I can't handle. It's too much. It's just too much coming at me at one time. So that is why it's so important that if you're going to do work like this, especially, I find it totally amazing that there are a lot of other folks having a channel or a community like this, and they read all the comments. I'm like, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it and still show up here. I just couldn't do it. It would be way too overwhelming for me. So that's why even right from the beginning, when my sister and I started doing this together, that was the initial goal, was to have her do that, because she's a thinker, she can handle that. And then we pulled in Lob and Jared, as well. So, okay. So, I was going to say, so my question is, so I get, when I get, discernment, judgment, how much of that is coming back to me because of what I put out there, especially related to F45, right? Over the last couple months, 8 years, I've been putting a lot of that out there regarding him, because it's really hard not to, right? So, but how much of that has amplified and come back to me, the energy, right? So maybe that's why I get all that. Maybe the more I move to discernment and stop with the judging, even related to him, believe it or not, because I can still sit in discernment and say, yeah, what a ding dong, but not move to judgment. I can still take action from here, but not from an emotional charge. There is a difference. So then it's the energy you're sending out, right? We can still be protectors of democracy. We can still do those things, but without the emotional charge. We can do it from a neutral place, so that we're not amplifying the energy we don't want to have come back to us. So anytime now that I get any kind of these judgmental things, I will watch to see, will it start to slow down the more I start to live here? Because I'm not I'm trying, my goal, I'm going to be working on this, is not to amplify, So, and this has to do with any part of our lives. What you put out there comes back to you. Okay. So science, emotional contagion, it's called emotional contagion. Negative judgments breed resentment. Discernment fosters clarity. Okay. So there was a study called Emotional Energy and Social Networks. All right. So, which only makes sense. Negative judgments breed resentment. All right. And if that's the energy you're sending out, you're going to get resentment back, right? Self-fulfilling prophecy is another science. There was another study. Judgment often manifests the very energy we resist. Judgment often manifests the very energy we resist. Quote, I really like that first quote. You guys remember that first quote? Judgment locks us in a cage. Discernment hands us the key. That's really good. So this quote is, judgment is like throwing a boomerang of poison. You might not see it return, but your hands will eventually feel it. Oh, yikes. Yikes. It'll be interesting in this conversation how many comments I get from a discernment place. And I want you guys to practice that. Practice the discernment comments versus emotional judgment comments. Judgment is like throwing a boomerang of poison. You might not see it return, but your hands will eventually feel it. Wow. Okay, so when judgment can be useful, protection. Quick judgments are evolutionarily vital. The person feels unsafe, right? That makes sense. Okay, then AI use shadow work. Now, I don't know if it's because it's getting to know me, and I don't know that I've never used the language shadow work with them. I don't think. I've just started using DeepSeek, but it might be. So when judgment can be useful, shadow work, it said. Noticing judgments reveals unmet needs or fears, and that's the Carl Jung shadow theory, okay? The key is awareness transforms judgment into discernment. So this is all I'm doing today, is bringing awareness to my consciousness and to anyone else who's interested, okay? So practical tools, pause and act. Is this thought serving me or limiting me? Reframe language, judgment. They're so selfish, or she's so wrong, or, whatever. Discernment, I value generosity. This dynamic doesn't align. This doesn't align with me, but it's fine if it aligns with other people, right? It's fine for now because where they're at or whatever, okay? So yeah, see how that sits with you. And then energy hygiene. Visualize judgments as clouds passing. I like how they said energy hygiene. I mean, I would never talk like this. And I just think it's amazing that they can put my thoughts actually into a way that actually makes really good sense to me. So energy hygiene, visualize judgments as clouds passing versus discernment as roots grounding you. That's beautiful. Visualize judgments as clouds passing versus discernment as roots grounding you. I am going to actually put this presentation outline, just the outline, in a newsletter so that people could grab it, okay? Maybe next week, actually. I'll do it next week. There's a newsletter coming out today, actually. I'm going to try to get them out I'm still working on the structure of it. I'm going to try to get them out every Wednesday, but when you first sign up, you'll get a few in a row, and then just every Wednesday, but I'm going to put this one in an email so people can think about it. Okay, closing call to action. Challenge for 24 hours. Replace one judgment with discernment. Notice shifts in your energy. Okay, that's your challenge for the next 24 hours. I think what I'm going to do in the journal that I'm creating is I'm going to do a page, because it is going to be like a 30-day challenge. It's a 30-day challenge, but it's going to be like dialogue between you and your higher self and your spirit guides, because we're working on our dialogue with them and forming partnerships with them. Okay, so a lot of people here are. And so, but I'm going to do a page of like challenge ideas like that you could do, so that, because not one challenge might resonate with somebody else. So maybe when we start 30-day challenges, you'll have options then, because not everything will resonate with one person or another. So just talking out loud. Okay, so final quote, discernment is how the soul navigates. Judgment is how the ego suffers. Oh, we've been suffering for too long. I hope there's some people in their 20s here. I really do, because I would love if someone had gone over this with me in my 20s and that I actually worked on this. Oh my gosh, can you imagine how different life would be, you guys? Okay, and get this, supporting resources. Get this. Two of the supporting resources. This is incredible. the 4 agreements, which is going to be, we're going to do a 30-day challenge in the community with each of the agreements coming up. Okay. I'll get that planned out. And then letting go, which is a card deck that I use frequently from David Hawkins. Okay. I'll put both of those in the description below. I mean, those are the books they gave us. Okay. So studies linked above on cognitive bias and emotional contagion. I will, again, if you get the newsletter, you'll get the studies. So if you want to look at them. Okay. Okay. So real quick, this might get a little long today, but let me just go back real quick and tell you what I asked. I'm kind of thinking about this is my discernment now. I want to provide a little information because of a comment that somebody had made about Jeffrey and the Crimson Circle. Because you have to be really careful about this kind of stuff. So somebody had said, oh, it's a cult and, like it's awful. And he's like a cult leader or whatever. First of all, that kind of stuff we have as human beings, we just have to be really careful about because so I was like, well, where's the proof in that? Like, what's the receipts, and we can't, we do it all the time, all of us, not just that person who made that comment, but this is the kind of stuff, if we're on a spiritual journey, we want to continue looking at. So I literally did write, I've heard that Jeffrey and Linda from Crimson Circle are running a cult. Is there any proof of that? If so, can you show me? Okay. So basically then AI came back and said, there's the categories, what critics say, and counterpoints from supporters, and then expert analysis and how to evaluate it for yourself. Okay. So real quick, I mean, basically, first of all, there is no proven, okay, by saying that it's a cult and there's a cult leader, that is really, it's almost like guilty until proven innocent, So that's just something as we move to the 5D that we need to really consider. Okay. So, because I find it fascinating. There's no judgment. There's another spider. I was recording. He's just walking around. I was recording something for Spirit Circle, I think, once, and I'm like, there's a spider up there. And then I had to go get it and put it in a cup and throw it outside. As long as he's not going to come down on I've been watching him come all the way across. He's walked like a couple miles in his little legs since I've been recording. Okay, so what was I going to say? Oh, I find it fascinating that I have no problem. I have no problems with Jeffrey and Adamus, and I've been listening to them for like a year. When he comes up, and some people feel so strongly about him, and I'm like, what is it like? What am I missing here? And so, yeah. And then I thought to myself, well, why am I looking to be judgmental? I'm just going to use my own discernment. It's not like I wrote down a bunch of things that he said the last time. I didn't write down everything though. And it's okay to be like, yeah, it just doesn't work for me. But if you're really reacting like from an emotional place, which a lot of people did, if you're reacting from that place, just put it here and see what that's about. Dig into it a little bit. Okay. Why is it that you get so triggered by what he says? Okay. So anyways, critics say that some former participants describe high pressure sales tactics for expensive workshops. Okay, so I don't know about that, the high pressure. I mean, that was ex-member testimonials. It's probably, email after email after email. That's how people have currently learned to sell things. So, high pressure is really interesting to me because it's like, if you feel pressure, are you in the love discernment area? Or are you on the ego judgment area? I'm not sure. I'm just throwing stuff out there. Esoteric hierarchy. The groups focus on ascended masters like Adamus and spiritual elitism. raises cult-like red flags for outsiders. Okay. When I listen to him, especially Adamus, he's pretty like straightforward, you know. But I appreciate straightforward. I don't appreciate beating around the bush, you know, just doesn't work for me. But, yeah. And some of the things he says, I'm like, well, that's silly, you know? So, you know, but I do think my thought goes to he's an ascended master. Okay. If you don't believe that Adamus Saint Germain is an ascended master, then that's different, right? That's your discernment and that's fine. If you don't believe that Jeffrey is actually channeling Adamus Saint Germain, then that's fine. That's discernment. But that doesn't mean that if I believe it, that I'm wrong. Okay. That doesn't mean I'm wrong, because do you have 100% proof that he's not? No. Right? Well, if you do, then show the receipts. Okay. Again, I'm not here to argue about this. This is all example of how we can grow spiritually from a love or fear-based. Okay. When we examine the stuff over here. Okay. So what I find fascinating though, my discernment says to me, if there are multiple channelers channeling Adamus Saint Germain, are the messages different and the approach different? Now, the approach could be different because the channeler themselves, well, let's just say a medium who's like clairvoyant or it has the clairs. I think the clairs are different than channeling, like the spirit comes into the body and talks. Okay. If there are two channelers, so not those just with clairs, but channelers. So Jeffrey is saying he's channeling Adamus. And then there might be somebody else. I know somebody said there was somebody else. I don't know who. Is that Tara maybe? No, not Tara. I don't know. Maybe it's Tara Arnold. I'm not sure. But the question is the message the same? Because if that entity is coming through, if it is Adamus Saint Germain and he's an ascended master, wouldn't his message come through the same? Why wouldn't it be the same? That would be the question. And I'm not saying that from a judgment place. I'm saying it from a discernment place. It's just an interesting question. Like, I don't have an emotional attachment to it. Okay, so isolation concerns. A few accounts suggested followers are encouraged to distance themselves from non-aware friends and family. Okay, I get that. But how many times do we say, you know, like how many of us have distanced ourselves from non-aware friends and family now, who have made it much more challenging with F45 and are just on a completely different spiritual path, or are living in the 3D versus us moving to the people who want to move to the 5D? Aren't we doing that too? Aren't we discerning who we want to hang around? And so I wonder if, you know, it depends on their approach, you know. So that's what the critics have said. The counterpoints is non-coercion. Crimson Circle doesn't enforce communal living, financial control, or cut off members from society. That's more of a cult, okay? So you can't say he's a cult unless, you know, you have evidence, you know. And maybe one person had a lot of fear around it, and just because they said it was a cult doesn't mean it is, okay? And I guess you can say the same thing about F45, just because, you know, I don't know, you know, again, we're just exploring here. So counterpoints, transparency, all materials, videos, books are publicly available, no secret doctrines. Okay. Legal status, registered as an LLC, not a religion, with voluntary participation. Okay. So please don't say it's a cult, because first of all, that's defamation. Until there's actual evidence, you know. Expert analysis, cult experts define cults by authoritarian control. Jeffrey and Linda don't dictate members' lives. Exploitation, while expensive, no evidence of forced payments. Isolation, members engage freely with outsiders. Verdict. AI gave me a verdict. Crimson Circle fits closely to a high demand group, like many spiritual communities, than a cult. So there's your verdict. Again, discernment may not work for you, which is totally fine. Just be careful when you're leaving comments. Again, then we're just using this as an example. Can't wait to see how many people got triggered by this conversation. If you get triggered by this conversation, then you've completely missed the point of this conversation. Okay. So maybe come back to it another day when you've had enough sleep or whatever, you're feeling better. So how to evaluate for yourself? Watch for warning signs, pressure to donate, us versus them rhetoric, or shaming dissent. Who does that? Who does that? The us versus them rhetoric. Who does that? F45, right? Shaming dissent. Compared to cult checklist, there is a cult checklist. And talk to former members, seek balanced perspective, Reddit threads. So that's what was given. Okay, that might not have been too interesting, but for you, but for those, I just wanted to let you know how I'm using discernment when it comes to Jeffrey and Adamus, because I find his messaging useful for my own discernment and my own spiritual growth, but that doesn't mean everybody does, right? And I'm, so, all right, that was a long one. I don't know how many people are still here, but here's the message for today. Anybody want a message for today from the pendulum? Pendulum message. Here it is. Someday soon. Someday soon. And guess what was someday soon? I'm going to show you one line at a time. All right. F45 arrested. And I did ask when. So let's see. All right, let's see. What that tells me, okay, so I don't know if anybody's watched Rosie and Karina a couple of nights ago. They had like a warning video. They were both picking up on some stuff. I've also heard some astrologers talk about May in terms of F45, very consistent to Rosie and Karina's message. So, you know how our spirit teams have been telling us, like, get ready, get prepared, and then also working on ourselves just in the meantime. That's kind of how they've been suggesting it. But the get ready, get prepared was like 2 months ago, which was really great because maybe this is the month we have to be prepared for. Wouldn't you rather have known that 2 months ago than the month you have to be ready for? You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of interesting that they were telling us that 2 months ago, and we were like, oh, we must have to get ready right now for like this month. But now I'm realizing, like, I'm feeling actually quite calm because I've given a lot of thought to what would I need if, let's just say, the power went off, the grid, like it did in Europe this week. So, and actually I heard somebody saying, which was a good point, and think about whether you're moving from discernment to fear right now. I'm going to use this all the time, discernment to fear. Which way, where did you just go? But somebody did say, why, when our electricity went off, what did that have to do with phone service? Because their phone service went off too. So just interesting. So that might be the 3 days of darkness stuff coming up. I like calling it 3 days of lightness, because when that if it happens, cut, clear, cancel, if it happens, and it's not, everybody will just have their own experience, but I'm going to try to live here in the love and discernment area. I know I'm prepared. I know it's fine. As long as like things are calm around me, I'm not going to, I'm just going to like actually enjoy journaling or something. I'm going to enjoy the quiet time. I'm not going to run around with my, like, all concerned and stuff, unless like something's coming, something's going on outside. But anyways, we'll see someday soon. But I'm just wondering if they're saying June 2025, like, what's the catalyst? Especially for that. What's the catalyst? So is something going to specifically happen? I don't know. Or has enough happened? Enough has happened. I mean, we could go over that. Okay, I know this is long, but I did ask, and there was one card that fell out. They wanted us to use the Spirit Animal Oracle today. So I'm going to do it, because I want a message today, and for anyone else who does, Colette Baron Reed. This book is super thick. Look at that. This is a huge deck, you guys. Look at that. How many cards does it have? 68 cards. I like this deck a lot. Okay. All right, let's get a spirit animal message today. All right, so I close my aura to all but my higher self, the God consciousness, my guides, guardians, and only those of the highest and purest light. And I ask Archangel Michael to please protect this community and this channel so it is only of the highest and purest light. Amen. Boy, yesterday I said something about the higher self, and I realized I say it. I do talk to my higher self because that's the prayer. The first thing I say is I close this aura to all but my higher self. So I am having a conversation with my higher self. It's not just my spirit guides. I don't know. I just never really connected that thoughtfully. Okay, so I will ask all of our spirit teams to come together, including all of our higher selves. Just consider your higher self as part of your spirit team, right? Keep it simple. Okay, so, oh, thank you. We just got to flip. All right, I'm just going to count on that being the message for today since this is getting long. I will just confirm. All right, is that the message you want us to have for today? Yep. Okay. And when I do, and just a reminder, when I do the pendulum messages and they spell out the words like they did, I always ask for a message from all of our teams. So it's not just coming from mine. So it's a collective message. Okay. So, oh, it's a 3. We haven't had a 3 for a while. Well, there's a little crown. Does it have to do with sovereignty? So music. Oh. Is that a flute or what is he sitting on there? Clarinet? I don't know. Okay. Canary spirit, sing your own song. Canary spirit, sing your own song. All right, let's see. And think about this from our conversation. Oh, I turned right to it. How amazing. I turned right to that, right to it. I love that. Okay, think about this from our conversation today about discernment versus judgment, okay, and where you might want to sit. Okay, so the protective message, are you suppressing your true voice, perhaps trying to sing the song you think people want to hear instead of your own? You create a cage around your life when you express only what you think will help you fit in and get what you think you want. Are you hiding the real you, telling a safe story about yourself to others because you are afraid they will think you are too different if they knew the truth? Canary spirit comes to help you express yourself in a more honest and authentic way. Yes, not everyone will agree with you. In fact, not everyone will want to hear your originality or accept your uniqueness. You must not give this a single care. There will be plenty of people, opportunities, and wonderful new experiences that arrive as if by magic once you open your own cage door and fly free. Canary spirit is cheering for you and wants you to know you are safe and loved. Find your voice and have courage to spread your wings and sing out loud. The world needs your true song. The world needs your true song. So what this means to me, based on our conversation. Now, this was a great message for each of us individually for sure. But what this means to me based on on the conversation we had is work on this, but also let other people sing their true song. Okay. When I see a bunch of judgment comments, what occurs to me is we're all trying to create mini-me's. Like if I'm going to get out and just judge, I'm trying to make mini-me's all over the place. I want everybody to think the way I do. I want everybody to discern the way I do. I want everybody to feel the way I do. Okay? Because otherwise, what's the point of judging, right? And so let people, if spirit is saying, you be unique, you give your true voice, but that means let other people do it too. Okay. It may not work for you, and that's okay. You're going to use your discernment. But when you start judging, is when you deflate people, you put them in cages, you don't, people are sensitive. They're going to pick that up, you know? So we want to do it for ourselves, but we also want to do it for others. I think when we get to the 5D, that's what we want. We want everybody to live their true self. But when we're judging people constantly, it makes, you know, I'm telling you, like, you know, and again, I'm just, you don't, there's no, I'm using this as an example, but I mean, you know how it feels. Like, your behavior will change of a whole bunch of people. Like, so think about people on video like I am. Every time you leave negative comments for people or judgmental comments, you are impacting what they're doing, you know, just like you do in your regular life, just like how people impact you. So the goal of my spiritual journey and the journey I'm taking those who are interested on here is to work on less and less, doing less and less of that. Not trying to create mini me's. I'm trying to let people be who they are and work their way to love. And, you know, you can encourage rather than judge, encourage. Whatever you say is encouragement to help people move to discernment, to help people move to wisdom, help people move to love. But how do people respond to judgmental behavior or judgmental comments? With fear, with anger, with irritation, and guess what energy they just sent to you? So think of all the comments. I'm thinking of all the comments I left about F45, you know, just trying to make my point, you know. What kind of energy did I send out there? How many people reacted and with like, oh, F you, or, you know, that was great energy I just sent back to myself. Nice. So anyways, all right, you guys. Wow, I went over an hour and 1 minute. What? All right, go get your canary, work on your canary spirit, and hopefully you'll start to take this challenge with me because I'm going to be working on this challenge. So, all right, have an amazing day. Bye-bye.